All right, so today we're finally doing a Stromberg video. I've been talking about doing this for a while, and a couple people have asked me to do it. So here we have it. My buddy Pat dropped me off 3 Stromberg 81s. One of them I already did, and we're going to try to make one good carb out of these 2. These are going on a Road Series building, which is going to be, we're pretty excited about that. So it's going to be a 3-part series. Today's going to be obviously part 1. And we're going to talk about the things to look for, when you're looking for a good core or whatever, things to look for before you even buy one. And then we're going to go through and disassemble one. We're going to talk about the things to look out for, common things that there are issues with, and I'm also going to explain how they work. So hopefully we can keep it short, sweet, simple, and everybody could learn something, and then we could all get back to work. So let me get the camera turned around and we'll get started. All right, so here we go. First thing, if you're gonna, if you're looking to buy one, if you're not, haven't done a bunch of these before, there's a couple things to look for. First thing is, I prefer to buy Strombergs that have the inlet attached. Sometimes when you see them for sale, if you're buying them online, and they don't have an inlet in it, sometimes the threads are messed up and you can't really tell, and they might not know, and this and that. So preferably, if they have the inlet, usually the threads are good. It's not always the case, but usually is. All right, another area that you will find is sometimes pretty buggered up is the hinge pin for the float. Sometimes these have been absolutely destroyed. They can be a little bit of a bitch to get out, especially without damaging the carburetor. But I will show you another neat little trick I have for getting those out. You could also look at the top. Sometimes there's holes drilled in here for, South bend heaters. It's not really a big deal. Sometimes you could solder them up, or you could put JB Weld and, something to get them done. It's not too bad. All right, the other thing I'll try to see if you can see this now, is if you could look at one in person, you could kind of see if the Venturis are destroyed. Now, there's kind of debate on this and how much of an effect that does have. I think if you're running just one carburetor and they're a little chewed up, it's not the end of the world. But I think if you're running 2 or 3 and they're a little chewed up, then you might have some issues. But, obviously, we want as clean as we can get. All right, so, this one doesn't look too bad, but we're going to take it apart and, we're going to see what's going on. All right, so usually, the first thing we could start to do is, all right, we'll take the accelerator pump rod off. Now, there's different rods, okay? The Stromberg 81s, 97s, and LZs, okay, both have summer and winter settings, which you could kind of adjust the travel of the pump. And this accelerator rod. Now, the 40s and 48s, you don't have to be too concerned about 48s. You're not really going to see those too often. Only have one stud. So the rods are a different length. All right. The 81 and 97 rod is a little bit long. I think it's like a ½ inch longer. I think, if I remember correctly, it's like 3 7/8. And the 40 and the 48 rod is 3 5/8, something like that. So, if you have a couple different rods laying around, you can measure and make sure you're using the right one. All right, so we're going to start getting this taken apart, and I'll show you a couple different tools that I have made or modified, screwdrivers, to get this done, a little easier, okay? We're going to take the choke lever and the kicker out of the way. The other thing is the 48s and 40s don't have this hole for a detent, for the choke. They usually, supposed to anyway, have like a wavy washer that keeps a little tension on it. So another little bit of information for you. All right. There's the fulcrum lever for the accelerator pump. I'm going to take that out. Okay. We could take the return spring out. That just kind of hangs out in here. Okay. So there we go. All right. Now we'll take the air horn off the top bowl cover. Try to do this in a way where I'm not blocking the camera and you could see it. I kind of hope you can. Anyway, So let's get the top cover off and we'll go from there. Okay. The top screws are 1024. All right, and in case you want to replace those, I get those in bulk from McMaster Car, which is really nice because then I could just, every carb I do, just put new screws in. Okay. Now we could see the float bowls. Okay, we could see the boosters. We could see the air bleeds. Idle jets. The idle jets on this one. All right, these look pretty bad. So I have a screwdriver, which you probably can't see, but I've ground it down a little bit. So this works really good on getting these out. I also don't recommend using a snap-on screwdriver to mess it up, but it does happen. So, okay. These are the idle tubes, all right? So, all right, the tubes themselves don't look terrible, but if you could see inside, I'm going to zoom in, those threads are pretty bad. So there's a good chance you'll get some air or fuel, something's going to leak through there. So I don't know if we're going to use this main body. We'll continue to take this apart. Okay, so now what I will tell you is that the fuel goes through this. This is for your idle circuit. When you are idling, your fuel is coming up through these, crossing over, and then it's coming back down. Okay, now I'm trying to think of the best way to explain it. The fuel has to come up to come down, because obviously if it just was, you know, you just had a port that out of the bowl that went to the throttle body, you would just constantly leak fuel. So the fuel has to come up to go back down, and you can see this passageway, and this kind of travels down there. So that kind of explains the idle circuit a little bit. We're going to take the inlet out. Okay, we're going to take the hinge pin, float pin, that's going to come out. This float doesn't look terrible. The best way to check these is, you know, go put a pot of boiling water on the stove, grab some tongs or grab something, hold this under the boiling water. If you see some bubbles, all right, you know there's a hole in here somewhere. If this does have a hole in it, this float's going to sit at the bottom, and fuel is going to pour out of here, and it's going to run terrible. It's going to make a big mess. Trust me, I know. All right, so now what we're going to do is, now we know that this is not where the idle tubes go in. I don't think we're going to use this main body. We're going to keep taking it apart. The power valve is not in there, so I have another one over here. All right, what I do with these is I have a screwdriver, which I have slotted, okay, and this fits in here perfectly. If you grind out the middle and you grind out the edges on a pretty wide screwdriver, you can get this in without destroying this power valve, okay? There we go. All right, so that wasn't in there. It's not really a big deal. All right, we're going to take, before we take that off, we're going to take the plugs out of the bowl. Okay, these are your mixture screws. I think we all know what these do. If not, this is how you adjust your mixture at idle. Pretty good rule of thumb is turn these in all the way and turn them in by hand. Do not use a screwdriver to turn these in, or else you will kind of put a ridge. You'll kind of like mushroom the tip. This one kind of is a little, it's not terrible, but it's not great. All right, so as a rule of thumb, setting these up, turn them in all the way by hand, turn them out 1 to 1.5 turns. All right, usually if you're running dual, you could just do 1 turn, and that'll get you in the ballpark. All right, we're going to take the bowl plugs out. Okay. Center plug has your check valve in it. Okay, now the check valve, when you step on the throttle and the accelerator pump goes down, okay, the ball in the check valve stays closed. When the pump returns, the ball in the valve opens and the well, the pump well, fills back up with gasoline. The plugs on the end are where your jets are. Okay, do yourself a favor. This is my favorite tool, the socket. Okay, this is an old snap-on socket. The part number is TMC42. You could find these on eBay anywhere from $15 to $40, and they're awesome. All right, some of those other tools are terrible, and there are some guys out there using 1/4-inch like stainless line that they crush a little bit and fit it on there. But this thing is awesome. You'll buy it once and you'll never have to get another one. Especially if you're going to do a lot of these. Okay, the jets. We're going to take the jets out. Proper jetting on an 81. I think the jets are 35s. All right, jets are 35s. I forget what the power valves are. I think 69. All right, and it does get a little confusing with jet size. The larger the number, the larger the hole. Power valve is a drill size, so the larger the number, the smaller the hole. Oh. Okay. Those are out. This can be an area of, sometimes the threads can be bad in the bowl. These are actually not too bad, but since the idle tube holes are pretty destroyed, it's not looking too good for this one. We'll see. All right, I'm going to move a couple of these things out of the way, and we're going to show you how to take the emulsion tubes out. All right. I think everybody kind of does the emulsion tubes in the same way. Now, the emulsion tubes are behind the jets on the end. You can't really see, but you could see them in the top where they come out of the boosters. All right, so we're going to take these out. Whatever you do, don't try to push these in that way. You're just going to, mushroom those, and then they're never, ever going to come out. So we're going to turn this over. A neat little trick is, I'm trying to remember the size. Just take a tap. I think it's a 632 fine machine thread. And what we're going to do is we're going to thread this. Hold on. Okay, we're going to thread this in to the emulsion tube. Okay, you don't have to go too crazy. Just go in. All right. Okay. Now that has been tapped, we are going to take a 632 machine screw. All right, and the way to do this is we're going to just thread this in by hand. It's got a nut and a flat washer on it, and we're going to use this to extract the emulsion tube. It's a pretty simple, neat, easy way to do it. Just take a socket, we'll put that on there, and we're just going to turn the nut. What's going to happen is that is going to, as the nut pulls the bolt, it's going to cleanly take the tube out. These usually don't break. They can if they're really, really bad, but I think we'll be okay. You can kind of check your progress. You can see that that tube is still in, and that one is not. I think that's a little bit easier to see. All right. I usually use a deep socket for this, but whatever. Okay. Let me get a deeper socket. Okay. And then once it feels loose, this comes out. All right, this one's actually been cleaned. This one's been taken out. All right. I'm going to be honest with you. Every rebuild I do, I change these. You know, these have all these little holes that are in there. And what happens is, especially these, what happens over a while, people over tighten the jets and they push this and they crush the tubes. I'm going to try to quickly, briefly explain how these work. The easiest way to try to explain this, you don't really need to know exactly how it works to rebuild one, but it, you know, can't hurt. Think of this, all right, the Venturi vacuum is going to be pulling air and fuel out of your emulsion tube. So if you crack the throttle open, you're going to watch fuel coming out, okay? The fuel is going to go through the jet and then through the emulsion tube. Think of this as a straw, okay? Think of sucking through a straw that has no holes in it, okay? Let's say you're sucking on a cup of gasoline. All right, you're going to get a mouthful of fuel. If you put too many holes in that straw, you're going to get mostly air, okay? So the right amount of holes at the right size is going to emulsify the air and the fuel, which is going to mix the proper amount of air and fuel. It's kind of a simple way to look at it. Maybe that helps you understand it a little bit more. It's kind of, you know, how I try to explain it to people, and I think it's a pretty, you know, a pretty accurate way to describe it. Carburetors aren't overly complicated, but sometimes people, you know, think that they are, or they're a little, you know, mysterious or taboo. It's a primitive, you know, especially something that, you know, these are pretty much not designed in the mid-30s, so that, you know, they are pretty simple. They are, you know, this isn't too complicated. If this is something that I could understand, then most other people can understand it too. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep taking this apart. All right. And tighten that all the way down. Just take a socket. Okay, since these have been extracted before, someone's been through this carburetor before, they're coming out a lot easier. If you're having a little bit of a hard time getting yours out, well, this one's a little dirtier. If you see this one, all right, they're often caked up with, you know, that zinc powdery crap that you're going to get when you have brass and pot metal hanging out for 50 years, however long. So sometimes they could be difficult. If something is not easy to take apart, you got a couple of choices, and I do it too. You could hit some of this with a little propane torch, I use a little soldering torch on some of this stuff. Something's a little tight, give it a little heat, let it cool down. You could give it, you know, a spray of some penetrating oil, you know, whatever you got to do. Sometimes they're really bad, and you might want to just take it and soak it in some, you know, a carb cleaner or a chem dip or something before even attempting to disassemble it. All right, let's see. Now that we got the emulsion tubes out, these are the tubes, okay, for the accelerator pump, squirters, and for the enrichment circuit on the power valve. These seldom go bad, but they are an absolute nightmare to replace, okay? But I do have a trick for taking these apart, okay? I think I'll do that in a different video right now, because I'd like to buy the new tubes so I could do a video of extracting them and installing the new ones. So yeah, you know, after these are cleaned and everything else is gone, what you're going to do is, you know, you could assemble this, you know, most of the way, and then I'd like to take it, you know, take the old pump or whatever and just give it a couple of whacks. Make sure that those are clear. Make sure, you know, that there's nothing stuck in there. They usually don't. They're usually pretty good, but you never know. Especially when you're dealing with old chrome carburetors, which, you know, we all know how I feel about that. So we'll take off, there's 3 quarter 20 screws that hold the bowl, center section, main body, whatever you want to call it, that holds that to the throttle body. Okay, And this is when we're going to take off. We're going to take this off. We're going to inspect the Venturis. The Venturis on this are absolutely, it doesn't really get much better than this. These are usually pretty chewed up. This is in pretty good shape. So unfortunately, these are pretty bad. You know, what we might do is I might just kind of gasket this and put some parts in it, and we might just see how it runs. But, you know, if you're going to put a lot of time and money into stuff like this, as you can see, like, you know, there's still brass stuck in there. This is, you know, it's unfortunate. That's usually uncommon. Usually, you know, a couple issues. Usually the inlets are destroyed. You can get Max sells, Uncle Max sells a brass insert, like a time cert, and I think Charlie Price does too. He did a long time ago. He might. So those can be fixed, and sometimes people. All right, my phone rang and it kind of interrupted the video, so we'll start again. I talked about the inlets, and sometimes you'll find that somebody couldn't get a power valve out, and this is destroyed. So the inlets, the power valve, the Venturis, those are like the three biggest things that usually are something's wrong with these. I have another little trick that I'd like to, you know, show you. Occasionally, you're going to get a float pin that's impossible to get out. Okay, so what you can do, okay, what I've done is I've actually taken the cover off and I've managed to cut a float apart with a pair of cutters, dikes, whatever. So you could kind of, I mean, you got to sacrifice a float, but then you could get in here and you could grab this with some needle nose pliers and you could turn it a couple times and then you can get it out. All right, it's a good way to, you know, you got to sacrifice a float, but at least you're not throwing away a main body. All right, I think that's going to do it for the disassembly and the things to look for. I hope this was informative. I hope this was, you know, you kind of learned something, and, you know, these aren't terribly hard. I do these all the time. I have a couple getting soaked right now that I do. And, you know, if you have any questions or if you still don't feel like doing this yourself, feel free to reach out. I enjoy doing these a lot. They're simple, and, you know, anything early Ford stuff I like. This is what mine look like when they're done. This one is for Pat. You know, pretty nice. Sticker on the top. All right. The other thing is some of these. This base is in pretty good shape. I don't think Pat wants to go too crazy. There's not particularly a lot of pitting in the throttle bores. I'm going to back off the idle screw all the way. Right. So what we could do is open those up all the way, and if there's a lot of pitting in here, especially around the throttle plates, you know, on one, like I said, on one carburetor it's not an issue, but if the throttle bores are worn out and you're running 2 or 3 carburetors, you know, you might have the idle screw all the way out and this thing's still idling at 1200 RPM because you just have too much air going through here. So unfortunately, sometimes the base is no good and you got to get another base. Sometimes you can get, you know, if you want, you could, and I have the tooling to do it. I'm going to show you on another one how to remove the throttle shaft bushings, how to ream them, how to install new plates, and the whole assembly. Okay, you also can buy the throttle body new from Stromberg. A lot of the new Stromberg stuff is really nice, and it depends. You know, I do these, and what I like to do on a rebuild, depending on the client's budget or what they want to do or how bad it is. Every rebuild gets new jets, gets a new power valve, gets a new float, gets new emulsion tubes. You know, if the idle jets don't look really nice, get new idle jets. The stuff does add up, especially when you're doing 2. It still does come out to be a little cheaper than buying a new one. But, you know, sometimes you don't want a new one. Sometimes you want an old one, especially, you know, for whatever reason. I still like to run the old ones. They just have a, I don't know, they look better to me. They still, it's cool when you could restore something that's, you know, 80 years old, 90, whatever it is, and, you know, bring it back to life a little bit and have it run well. So I think that that's where we're going to leave off. I'll do another video on how I clean these, what I do, or, you know, I mean, I might not even need to do that. I might just clean these all up, get them ready. I gently bead blast these very carefully. I soak them in a chemical dip, and then they come out of a chemical dip, and then they go into a 180-degree sonic cleaner just for a couple minutes, just to get any of the corrosive stuff from the chemical dip off. And they come out looking really nice. So hopefully this was helpful. If you have any questions, shoot me a comment. You could email me, you could reach out, whatever you got to do. And yeah, hopefully this was informative, and that'll do it. So any questions, shoot me some comments. If this was helpful, you know the deal. You could like, subscribe, or share, or whatever everyone's supposed to do on these. So thanks for watching.